Hi, this is Stratman. Welcome to part 2 of my typical trading day. If you've been followed on from the last video, we've now got 36 pips in the current daily range. So I'm looking pretty close to possibly entering trades under the rules I have. Notice that all the THV rules are flicking on and off here, saying that they're all met. And if we go to the time frame here for M15, we see for sure we've got the slope on the fast tricks, slow tricks. We're above the cloud, we're above the coral, we're at MS1 here. The thing that concerns me, even though all the rules are met, this is where beginners get into trouble. What I'm going to do is just quickly do an assessment of the daily pivot. How far away are we from that? Well, we're 20 pips, 18 pips to that pivot point. Now, one of the typical things, if you've been in trading a little while and done a bit of education, is you'll know that if price opens on a certain side of the daily pivot, that there's a high probability that the trend for the day will be on that side of the daily pivot. So it's fairly likely that as price gets close to this daily pivot, that it's actually going to be rejected. There's a high probability of that happening. So even though all the THV rules have been met on this M15 time frame and also on M5, we're just too close to that daily pivot to consider a trade. And also on the M5, I know the rules were made back here, but remember the daily range, the volatility just wasn't there for me to enter a trade, even though the rules were met back here, above the coral, above the cloud, so on. And if I go down to the M1 time frame, even here, there's been good opportunity to make a trade here and get some profit. All the rules were met about this point, and you could have made about 23 pips, 24 pips profit there. But you've got to work by the rules that you use for your strategy and stick to them. Very important. So I'm not getting into this trade for those reasons. First of all, it was because the daily range hadn't been met when all those things were right. And the other thing that's important to note here is that I've put a line here at the big round number of 129. So my other point of view is that we're going to probably expect price to stall here too. So we've got a number of reasons, even though THV was all good for taking a trade, we haven't quite made our 40 pips for the day, enough volatility that is. We're heading right into a big round number right here. In fact, it's only a few pips away, 8 pips, 7 pips away right now. We are also pretty close to our pivot, so there's quite a high chance that price is going to bounce off this, and aggressive traders would probably, as soon as we get close to here and start seeing a slight turn here, we'd probably just enter into a short trade with a small position and see how it goes, put a stop just the other side of the daily pivot. So we may even do that yet. Let's see how we go. And that kind of breaks the rule of trading towards the compass, but it's actually a fairly high probability trade, trading off a bounce off the daily pivot. And knowing that the range here is nearly 40, it's probably going to get to 40 when it hits this point. So like I say, high probability of taking a trade there. So I may take a trade towards the compass there, only from the point of view that we're getting nearer 30 pips here. 35 pips would be ideal, but we've got the confluence of a big round number there, the daily pivot there. Makes good sense to take a trade short. So we might do that in a sec. So I've just switched down to the M5 time frame. M15 is showing that we're getting up near this point. I might just turn the automatic trend update on because it keeps on moving aside. So we've come up to this point and we've now kind of almost bounced off it. And if you look at price action on the M5 chart, we're seeing some kind of candle formation there that's showing that there's a line of resistance here being generated. And this is a good opportunity to look at actually doing a short trade. So what I'll do is I'll just put a quick line just here to show you what I mean. So at this point here, we're seeing a bit of a definite point of resistance. Price has gone a shot way up above it, but been rejected back to here. It's tried it again and been rejected back to here. Now it's broken through there again. Let's see what happens if it comes back and closes below there. And in fact, if price then creates a candle that goes down below this point here, which is where one of our current fractals are, we might even take a trade short there. So let's see if it gets rejected back again. It might get rejected right off the 129, but I'm certainly not going to take a long trade right now based on this. Based on that, we're going into this big round number, and we're pretty close to our daily pivot. So again, just sitting aside and just see what develops. But just a word of warning as we look at this, that candlestick patterns on lower time frames, like we're on the M5 right now, are not as reliable as on higher time frames. So sometimes you may get a few anomalies, but I'm just going to go through how I would exercise this. I would now move this down to here as my most recent support, because I've had a couple of candles come to that point. And then I'm going to draw, well, basically I don't need to draw a line at the top here. This clearly is my most recent resistance on my M5 chart. So I'm looking for a breakout of this little consolidation here. If I see some candle formation here that shows me going down, I'm looking at a short trade. If it breaks out of here, I could be looking at a long trade, but we need to we need to remember that a long trade is not a good thing right at the moment when we're going straight into the daily pivot, and let's just watch. Now if we switch over to the M15 time frame, and I'll just zoom in so you can see it a bit clearer, you can see that this point here that was resistance right here has now become support. That's quite common within Forex, that we end up with and you can see my current M1 support line in the background there, the fractal generated one. So it's quite a common thing, resistance then becoming support. So prices come up, resistance, come back, broken through, come back and tested that. Now we're on the M15. So look, I'm going to have a look at the 1 hour as well and see where we're at. Well, we're just about right on our line there, and we're just about making a double top there. We just need to see whether this breaks through here. If this breaks through here, we could be looking for a long trade. If it doesn't break through, we're looking for a rejection off that and go short, remembering that we'd like to have the high probability setup of the daily pivot being the thing we're quite close to. So if we look at the daily pivot, it's sit at 0.13. So we've got both the big round number and the daily pivot as potential stop points. So we'd probably put a stop just the other side at about 129.20 to trade this as a short. So that's what I'm looking at now, but I need confirmation that we're looking at a short. So let's wait for that confirmation. Now, one important thing that I have looked at, but I've just realized I haven't shown you, is that we must check the current calendar, which is on forexfactory.com, and we need to see what's going on during today. It's set at my time zone, so 1 PM was the last thing. It's now 2 PM, so these are the next things of interest. Now throughout the day, there's a few euro medium kind of, or some kinds of things going on. They're not really significant. The only thing that is of interest is at 3 o'clock is the Chinese have got the GDP. So we just need to keep aware of that, just in case there's something that could affect our trading. Okay, I'm looking at the 1 minute on THV. I'm seeing divergence just appearing here, and so it's time to think about just doing a quick scalp, which I'm going to do. And so I've entered a trade just based on that divergence. I know all the rules aren't met, but I'm basically taking this as a high probability trade, as a bounce off the 129 big round number and the daily pivot. So daily pivot's just there. I'm putting a stop just above the daily pivot and the big round number. and I'll do another video shortly to see how this eventuates.